to What Do You Want to Do, the show that will hopefully help you figure out what you want to do in life or reconnect you to what you love doing. Each show has a guest who is doing what they want to do, whether it's in their career or in addition to their regular job. Most importantly, we want to help you realize that no matter your age, you too can do what you want to do if you have the will to do it. Now here's your host, Leonard Kaplan.
Welcome, Dan Kline. This is your second appearance here on What Do You Want to Do? And you have a lot to tell us. Things have changed dramatically since your appearance when you were with Seven Investing. You are no longer with Seven Investing. I want you to explain. Not that you owe us an explanation, but
no, I do. I promised if if I ever changed, I would. So it is no fault, Len, of Seven Investing. Those are my friends.
Yeah.
They're incredibly supportive people. My former job before that at Motley Fool, same thing. I have nothing but love.
Yeah.
But I was sitting at my desk one day, and I loved broadcasting. I loved a lot of what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I got an email. And I got an email from a headhunter, and the headhunter said, "Hey, your name has come up, and there's a very big financial site that's looking for some people, and we'd love to talk to you." And in my mind, I take every call. You never know when. Like, I have one recruiter who recruited me a few years ago, and the job was terrible, and I didn't want it. But the recruiter and I are good friends.
Yeah.
My other people in my world have interviewed for jobs because I've met people, befriended them, and maybe I wasn't right, but when Microsoft laid off its whole editorial staff, I helped a lot of them find jobs because I keep every contact. If I like someone, I'm always gonna do my best to keep in touch, especially when it's professional. I'm not so good at the personal, which but I got this message, and I thought, oh, what the heck? Like, I'm happy. I like my job, but like, you never know. Like, what if this is that $1 million job that no one has in my profession? Mm-hmm. So I take the call, and we have a half-hour meeting, and I really liked the recruiter. And she basically says, "Oh, we were thinking about you for this job, but actually we should put you up with your experience for managing editor." And I said, "Well, that's great, but what's it for?" And she finally tells me that it's TheStreet, which is a venerable brand in the financial space, but it was a brand started by Jim Cramer, the TV guy on CNBC. And Jim Cramer, about 4 months ago, left TheStreet to go work full-time at CNBC. So it was a really famous name. It'd be like if Grimace and Ronald McDonald left McDonald's. You'd be like, "Uh-oh, we need a new face. We need a new mascot. Early Bird's just not going to cut it here. And Hamburglar is, of course, a villain." So they needed someone to help rebuild the brand. And as they started talking to me about sort of what they needed, the part of my brain that had turned off that was like, this is never going to happen. I'm never going to get to lead a big newsroom. I'm never going to get to sort of do something I've always wanted to do. I'd kind of given up on it years ago and just pursued other dreams. Mm-hmm. That part of my brain went, "Oh my God, I want to do that. Why did I not pursue this? Like, this is available to me." And as much as I loved broadcasting, which will someday be part of this job and podcasting, it's just not my today priority. I went, "Oh my God, I get to mentor young people. I get to work with, experienced people. I get to hire a bunch of people and work as part of we're the same company that owns Sports Illustrated." There's just, the opportunities seem really big. And once that sort of became possible, well, I put my name out there. And that was very gratifying because I immediately got responses from two other very major websites. One where a longtime boss of my college roommate who used to run a place I worked. I'm going to try to be very not descriptive to not get him in trouble. But he knew people who knew me. And when he did his homework, he immediately responded and went, "Oh my God, we got to talk." And then a third very major player came up and said, "Hey, like, would you like this level job?" And that process was very gratifying. And ultimately, why did I take the job I took? Because it seemed the hardest. I looked at TheStreet and I went, "It's kind of a mess. Like, there's no direction." Like a lot of the staff had gone with Kramer to CNBC. The staff that was still there were veterans, but maybe they needed direction. They kept the lights on, and that was admirable. But they needed to know, what are we trying to accomplish? Where are we trying to go? And it was a leap of faith. Financially, it was beneficial. Like, I'm not going to pretend it wasn't. But I mean, previously I had a ton of flexibility. I could go wherever I wanted. I could be at Disney World on a Tuesday in the afternoon. And taking an actual job, sure, there's positives. I haven't had benefits, not through my wife in a decade. So it's really nice to not be an independent contractor and to have, paid time off and health insurance and all those things that, are not so easy to come by as an independent contractor. But I really looked at it and went like, I can make the biggest impact here. And, we talked about video, but there wasn't much video. That's an open, there's no podcast, so it's a big brand, but it's a big brand that maybe has fallen down a little bit over, the past few years. And I get to be part of with my boss, and we could talk about that in a minute, and her boss, who's our editorial, our president of media. And it's this whole team built around taking this thing that once was and making it something new and something even better. And that really appealed to me.
Can you describe exactly what it was?
So Jim Cramer is a trader, more so than an investor.
Okay.
And that's not to fault him. He has his following. He's beloved. He's very popular. But a lot of what he does in the stock market is very active. It's very do this, sell this now, buy this then. And a lot of TheStreet was built around this stock is up 2% because of this reason. And who cares if the reason was true? There's a lot of people that follow that news. I mean, it wasn't not true, but it's not always that important why a stock moves a couple of percent. So the first thing I did, and then later my boss, a woman named Sarah Silverstein, who's our editor-in-chief, who's amazing and wonderful and incredibly supportive of me, is we said, well, what's important? What's actual news? How do we recast this so it's still relevant to the people who are maybe trading more actively than I personally do as a buy and hold investor? But how do we, when they read a story that maybe CNBC has, maybe MarketWatch has, maybe all these sites that have more people than I do, when they read that story, what are we bringing to it? What's our little piece that makes it special? And I don't want to pretend we've gotten there. We're in inning one of a 9-inning game, but we've made some appreciable changes. And you go to the site, and there's some quirky stuff and some stuff you don't see elsewhere. And we've had some new hires come on board, but it's a very long process to take something that was very tied to one person and make it something else. I mean, it's a silly example, but my wife and I like the Food Network. And last night we watched Throwdown, which used to be hosted by Bobby Flay, the celebrity chef. Okay. And now Michael Simon, a different celebrity chef, hosts it, but he uses all the same terms and catchphrases. It's like when Johnny Carson got replaced. It just felt weird for a while. Like, wait, it's the Tonight Show and it's not the same. This is kind of the Tonight Show. And I guess that makes me, I hope not Conan O'Brien, as much as I love Conan O'Brien. I hope I'm Jimmy Fallon in this scenario. Again, Conan O'Brien is one of my heroes, so I don't want to pretend that he wasn't brilliant at that job. But it's really a case of how do you build something new and interesting? And to me, that just has a lot of appeal because, I mean this kindly, a lot of financial journalism is very bad. It's very surface. The people writing it don't understand the material they're talking about. They haven't lived it. They haven't experienced it. And I'm a big believer in, and look, is the average writer going to fully understand cryptocurrency? Probably not. But if you're writing a story about Starbucks, maybe you should have been there. Maybe you should have had a coffee or know that you like the cookies because you don't drink coffee or whatever it is. I'm very much of that. Let's learn, let's experience. And I've talked a lot with my team about the more you do something, the more you know. Like the fact that I've probably covered Costco for 10 years means that nothing Costco does surprises me because I know the history of it. I know the cadence of when they raise prices and that type of thing. So it's really getting to work. A lot of like what you've done, as a teacher, where you just take this raw talent and you turn it into something that hopefully puts something out in the world that's useful. Because I'm not sure the world needed another, why did the price of gold drop by 2% story? But maybe the world does need context on, why certain investments make sense and certain investments don't make sense, or hey, this is happening in this industry, and and here's the bigger reason. Like, it's silly, but today I wrote a piece about how Costco is very likely to raise prices soon on its memberships, but it will probably never raise prices on its $4.99 rotisserie chicken, even though it loses 30 to 40 million dollars a year on those chickens. And that's something that if you don't understand their business, you probably can't write that story with the nuance that I wrote it. And now, of course, my challenge is teaching all the people who work for me how to be able to do that. And that is a very big challenge. That is a big part of what attracted me to the job.
Well, it looks like that you're doing just the opposite with the material that you did with Seven Investing, where, every minute you guys would say, go in it for the long term, and don't bother about what's going on today and tomorrow, whatever. And you're right. You're dealing with trading now as subject matter. So,
well, yes and no. So we have some paid products that are much more in that. We don't have any day trading products. We have some products that are more actively traded portfolios, or that are more recommending 18-month holds rather than buy and hold. And there's definitely some investment philosophy from very skilled people on the site for our paid products that aren't what I do, and they aren't what I recommend. That being said, those work for some segment of the audience. And one of the things I'll be helping build out is, what are the bridge products? What is the advice that points out, like, you could do that, but what are the tax implications of buying and selling something under a year? So you're not going to turn the cruise ship around all at once and take something that was built around Jim Cramer and actively traded portfolios. You're not going to pivot it to Seven Investing, Motley Fool, very, very long-term buy and hold forever. But what you can bring in is, well, what does buy and hold mean? Why do you do it? If you're going to trade based on news, understand when news is real and when news isn't, and why sometimes things go up for reasons that seem like they'd go down, or the opposite happens. So a big part of why I think they hired me is because I can infuse more of that and broaden our tent to the mom who wants to just make safe investments to pay for college, the 25-year-old who lost his shirt on GameStop and really wants to understand how investing works, but can be more risky because they're 25. And look, I think it's fine for anybody, maybe not, where you are in life, but anyone in their 20s, 30s, 40s, if they want to take 5-10% of their portfolio and be like really risky, as you get older, that makes less sense. But when you're younger, you can do that. Or if you so the reality is, it is a big sort of gap to fill. And I looked there and went, this whole thing is one thing. And that's a very small niche in this investing world. And I want that person who's actively trading and doing it well to understand what they're doing better, and to understand, wait, I own this really good company. Maybe I don't need to sell it just because it's up X%. And that's what my chart tells me to do. Like, maybe it's going to keep going up, but it might go down at points. And if I hold, and that's the piece, I try not to be dismissive of sort of what anyone does, unless they're doing something like truly dangerous. And sometimes you see that they're things like buying options. When you buy a stock, let's say you buy a stock for $100 a share, you buy one share, so you've put $100 in. The most you can lose is $100. Losing $100 isn't fun, but most people, $100 isn't going to cripple your life.
Right.
If you buy options, especially under certain strategies, you can actually lose significantly more. And the same thing with shorting stocks and some of these other strategies that seem very appealing on paper, and some of the brokerages make available to very inexperienced traders. One of my goals is to make sure that people have a good experience. Think of it this way: if you've never roller skated before, and I just hand you roller skates and you put them on and you fall and you hurt yourself and it's no fun, and there's disco playing and you don't like disco, like, that's not great. But if I take you roller skating and I hold your arms and I show you how to do it, and I give you some input in what's playing, and maybe the Beatles are on in the background, like, and you have a fun experience, and it's hard and it's stressful, but it's still fun, you might come back. And that's kind of what I'm hoping to do with this new generation. And I don't pretend to be able to speak to millennials. I certainly have younger people on my team and people who are, speak that language a little better, but it's very, very easy to invest. When you were my age, you had to use a broker, you had to pay big fees. And when I was, 15 years ago, now you can sign up in 5 minutes. My son has a stock market account. Now he's 17, so it's under me, but he works at Wendy's and 30% of his paycheck gets moved into the stock market. And we talk about, and mostly I'm having him buy things like Target and Costco and Disney and things he understands that are good investments. But at his age, if he starts investing even the relatively small sums, that should be a massive amount of money when it's time for him to buy a house or retire or whatever that might be. So that's what I want to teach is, boy, do I wish someone when I was 20 told me put $50 a week into
I do too.
And look, you can't go back, but you can make it better. You can help the next people. And, as much as I'm not the world's most patient teacher, I do like teaching, and I'm not condescending. And I think a lot of people in the stock market world can be very much my way is the only way. And the smaller you make the tent, sort of the less chance you have for agreement or to find the middle ground. And I mean, look, a lot of young people have made some very, very dumb, I'll use the word investing, but it's not really investing, decisions because like a friend in a Reddit group told them something. Well, pretty much if like some person on Facebook tells you something, probably not the best idea. Like that's not great actionable, advice. That's true for the pandemic. That's true for, maybe it's not, maybe like restaurants to eat at Disney World. You could take Facebook advice for, but like, who should my heart surgeon be? I don't know. Maybe ask your doctor, like not your social media community. And that's, I want to be credible. I want people to understand that even if they don't agree with what I have to say or what we have to say as a site, or they don't like a particular thing, that understand where we're coming from. Look, you can't please everybody, but I do think I can build a very readable product and working with my boss, eventually a really strong video and audio product that does something that nobody else does. And I don't know, maybe I'm deluding myself, but I think there's a lot of room to be interesting. And as much as I read, as much as you read, there's never a day where you're like, you know what? I finished the internet. Like everything I want to read, I'm done with. And I'd like to hope that we can become part of people's diets and people go directly to the site and discover us on social media or TikTok or wherever it might be that content goes these days. Apple News, a big driver, Flipboard, all sorts of places you can go to get stuff. And that opportunity, every year at election time, my brain would go to, what's really fun at election time? To be in a newsroom. There's always pizza. Everyone's in a good mood. Like I mean, sometimes it's scary because of the politics, but on a local basis, it's just fun. There's a lot going on. You know what your role is as the media. And obviously it's a different perspective in the financial world, but like, I don't know, Warren Buffett does something or Jack Dorsey from Square or Mark Zuckerberg or whatever. I get to be in that like excited news environment that I really haven't been in since my Boston Globe days.
Right. Now, speak to the situation where you're doing more writing now than being on the air. You're not on the air now anymore for a while until you start up again.
Yeah,
what's your audience reach?
So I'm going to be a little careful with violating and sharing those numbers, but it is a very large platform. Okay. And I'm actually not writing because it's part of my job. I'm writing because the easiest way to teach people is to show them what you want. And more importantly, my writing connects with readers in a way that nobody else I have does. So as I'm trying to build the audience, the easiest way for me to do that is to spend an hour or so a day writing a couple of stories, which I very much enjoy. Writing is very much like yoga for me. It's very like I went to bed last night with a story in my head.
Hmm.
And that was a mistake because I didn't sleep. I should have just gotten the story out of my head
Wow.
onto the page. And that's a muscle that I'd really let go dormant. And I think there was, and not that I wasn't writing at Seven Investing, but it was very limited. And
Mhm.
even my last like 18 months at Fool, I was mostly broadcasting, and there was a lot of writing for the broadcasting. But
Yeah.
in the years before that, I was writing, 6 to 8 pieces a day, sometimes more, sometimes less. And I got very, very good at it and very, very trained. And it was nice to see that was still there when I went to it. But in my head, it's like, well, I don't want to do that. Like it's like a hot fudge sundae. Like one's great, you don't want 10. Somewhere in the middle of a second one, you're probably very tired of hot fudge sundaes. So for me, getting to write is really nice. Writing
Mhm.
2 or 3 things a day isn't what I want to do, but I
Yeah.
also want to set the example for all the editors who work for me that,
Mhm.
because we don't have a huge staff. And even as we get bigger, I want, wait, it's 4:30 at night. Netflix just raised its prices, which literally just happened. And nobody is here because we had some people out today and we start early. So a lot of my East Coast people are done by 4:30. My West Coast person was working on some things and some other people weren't there. I want people who work for me to be like, wait, well, if Dan was available, he'd jump in. So I'll jump in.
Mm.
I worked Christmas partially because I started in October and I didn't get to set a holiday schedule. So magically, everyone was off for 2 weeks at Christmas time.
Right.
But I got to show my team that I'm not above doing what needs to be done. And I think that's very important. And there are times where I have to tell my team, yeah, I'm in executive meetings all day. Like I get to go to some really cool meetings. Like I get to go to meetings where I'm sitting with, obviously virtually, the editors of Sports Illustrated, which is our sister
Mhm.
property. And like those are like people I can like
Hmm.
message now. As someone who had a football phone, that's a pretty
Mhm.
cool, person, people to know. But the fact that I've never been, hey, I'm not going to clean the bathroom just because I'm the boss. And that's
Right.
something that really comes from my grandfather and my father. My family owns Lynn Ladder and Scaffolding, which is an institution over there where
Yeah.
you live. And my grandfather, when I was a kid, and we talked a little bit about him in the last podcast, if he was walking by and a customer needed help, he'd help the customer.
Sure.
And to me, that's just so obvious that if I come into
Yeah.
work and the best way I can make an impact is to edit a story or write a story or work with a writer or clean the bathroom, that's what I'm going to do. Now, hopefully, I can do things that have broader impact. And that's how I spend a lot of my day. But I don't think like anybody ever should look down on work. And when I don't care, the CEO of a company, if he walks into the office and somebody threw a bunch of trash on the ground, pick up the trash. Like that's
Yeah.
sort of how life works. And it's super cool that they pay me well and I have a nice title. And in the old days, I'd have like a key to the executive washroom like George Jetson always wanted. But now it's a pandemic. We all work in our basements. So
Yeah. A while back here, we were talking about, or you mentioned that people my age don't generally take big risks with finances to invest. Are there any publications or video uh, programs or podcasts that deal with people in their 50s and 60s financially and advise them?
yeah, absolutely. So we have a guy who works with us named Bob Powell, who does a product called Retirement Daily. And it
Mm.
focuses on people who are actually retired or retiring and how they manage their money. There's actually a lot out there. AARP does some stuff, but that's an area where when I look at what we're going to build and what we're going to do, it's I want to speak to every part of the financial journey. So I want something that can be a credible program to go talk to high school kids and talk about how maybe you're just going to invest your Christmas money or have your parents give you $10 a month and you can buy fractional shares on whatever platform and slowly learn it, to someone who is okay, I am 60, I'm going to retire at 67. I have X amount of maybe a pension or some sort of retirement benefit. I have this much money. I live in a house that I own. Am I going to move? Am I going to, there's so many pieces. We do some content like that,
Mm.
but I want to hit every part of the tent. There's not a lot in the finance space dealing with the needs of minority communities, of addressing women specifically. And obviously there's areas where men and women are exactly the same, but there's also areas where we're different, and you want to make sure you have those voices. And that's one of my challenges as a manager, as a boss, is making sure I find diverse voices. There absolutely have to be, and we're lucky Bob Powell is very accomplished, but there have to be people that are in your age bracket, not just people in my age bracket. And I like to think I'm a very young 48, as you are a very young, whatever age you are. But my friends are all very young. I think that keeps me young. And I think you have a similar situation where a lot of the people in your world are not
Younger.
necessarily your age.
Exactly.
But that being said, I have some really smart friends who are graduating college that their take on finance is very well informed, and it's very different than mine. And I don't always agree with them, but back at Seven Investing, I would have some of them on shows, and very quietly, I'm trying to hire some of those people because it's important. Now, is there a part of me that goes, "You don't know anything, kid"? Like, of course, like I think that's naturally, but as a boss, I think it's important to sometimes say, it's all right for me to be skeptical. It's all right for me to sort of put my objection on the record, but that doesn't make your opinion less valid. And I'll give an example. A good friend of mine who is not available, so I can't hire him. He just took a job elsewhere, really loves Viacom CBS as a stock. And there is a case you can make that they own Pluto, which has done very well on the advertising side. Paramount Plus has grown. It's very tightly controlled. It's undervalued. There's a lot of cases you can make. And then I would look at it and go, but I could buy Disney, which owns Star Wars and Marvel and Pixar, or I could buy CBS Viacom, whose number one product is Star Trek. And I'm pretty sure Star Trek is not as big a product as the 17th rated Star Wars show. And then after Star Trek, it's like the Twilight Zone and SpongeBob. And like, it's not a great lineup of content. Whereas when you look at what Disney owns, you go, oh my God, even when you look at what Comcast owns, and there's a lot of reasons I don't like Comcast as a company, but like you go, wait, Comcast owns Fast and the Furious and all the monsters and Jurassic Park and all these different things that, Minions and Despicable Me. And then you look at, but my young friend can fully explain why Viacom CBS is a great investment, and he may turn out to be right. So that's when I talk about like having the tent and making sure, and a lot of what we do is news coverage. So what you think in some ways doesn't matter, but we all know that what you think colors what you do, whether or not that's, actually the case or not. So it's really exciting. And I try to be very conscious of it. And it's very challenging. The world has changed, and thinking about all these different viewpoints and how to make people feel represented and part of it is a really exciting part of the job. And I'm lucky that as a company, we have really great resources to deal with that. But I am a little bit conscious that I'm not I'm the one everyone talks to. There's a Homer Simpson where he says gum and nuts together at last, and he says, I'm a white male, age 35 to 49, like whatever I want. Like, and it's like, well, yeah, that's kind of where I am. So I have to make sure to find all those things. And that to me is really exciting, to just like talk to different people and get different takes. And sure, there's some factual things that maybe I'm right on, but in a lot of cases, just different perspectives, they make you think, even if you don't change your mind. And I'm not great at changing my mind, as I think is probably true of most people.
Would you describe your job to a young person looking around as a journalism job or as an investing advice job?
No, it's a journalism job. Now, we have a whole investing advice paid product arm, and technically that arm reports to me, and there's something we're working on that I would more directly be involved in. But that part of the company, I don't want to say it functions well, but it has less that needs to be immediately fixed than the public facing part of the company, which in theory feeds into the paid part of the company. And the public facing part is much more journalism. Now, will I be writing opinion pieces labeled as such? Yes, at some point that I will probably write a column or something along those lines. But most of what we do on the free side, or at least what my team does, is news. And I would say it's right on the edge of news sometimes in terms of, having maybe a little bit of angle to it, but angle more in terms of attitude than taking a clear, buy Apple stock because of this. It's more, well, here's what Apple did today, and here's the news, and here's somebody's perspective on it. Now, are there people who report to me that are doing, opinion pieces and analysis? Yes, there are. So it's not purely simple, but it's sort of like being the editor of a newspaper. The person on the editorial page still reports to you, even if they're somewhat autonomous in what they do. And I view my job largely as a teaching job.
Thanks for joining me on What Do You Want to Do with my second interview with Dan Kline as he changes careers, or rather positions. Join me again next week as we go into a little bit more depth about what's going on in the professional career of Dan Kline. Until next time, what do you want to do?